Good morning, my dear colleagues and students. I hope all of you are doing fine. Students start writing reports starting from their school days. The source of the information is mainly books and internet. As the students cross the boundary of their schools and enter engineering colleges, they write more technical reports and theses. Apart from the technical contents of these reports and theses, ethical aspects are also very important. The ethical concerns are also very important when the student carries out his experiment in the laboratory. My today's talk is on the ethical guidelines concerning the scientists and engineers. In between my talk, I will tell you one or two stories, very short stories of 1 minute duration based on my experience. Ethics defines the moral standards that govern the conduct of a member of a profession. An essential feature of a profession is that the acceptance by its members of a code that outlines desirable behavior and specifies obligations of members to each other and to the public. Such a code derives from a desire to maximize perceived benefits to society and to the profession as a whole, and to limit actions that might serve the narrow self-interest of individuals. The advancement of science requires the sharing of knowledge between the individuals, even though doing so may sometimes entail foregoing some personal advantage. With these thoughts in mind, a set of ethical guidelines is generally followed for persons engaged in publication of research, specifically for authors, editors, and the reviewers of manuscripts. In my today's talk, I will talk about the ethical guidelines for the authors. Guidelines are there for the editors also and reviewers also, but in today's time, I will be able to cover only for those of the authors. Now, these guidelines are based on a conviction that the observance of high ethical standards is so vital to the whole scientific enterprise that a definition of those standards should be brought to the attention of all concerned. Most of the guidelines should be understood and subscribed to by the majority of engineers and scientists. And these guidelines will be of substantial help to those who are relatively new in research. Even well-established scientists may appreciate an opportunity to review any significant development in these guidelines, because sometimes as time goes by, we forget the ethical concerns and a refreshment is often necessary. When we start the ethical obligations of authors, I will talk about this in today's talk. The authors are expected to adhere to some ethical guidelines, and infractions may result in the application of sanctions by the editors, including but not limited to the suspension or revocation of publishing privileges. An author's central obligation is to present an accurate and complete account of the research performed, absolutely avoiding deception, including the data collected or used, as well as an objective discussion of the significance of the research. In my third story, I will tell you a case study in which major deceptions were carried out by a student in her PhD work, which was published in Chemical and Engineering News in 2011. The data are defined as information collected or used in generating research conclusions. The research report and the data collected should contain sufficient details and reference to public sources of information to permit a trained professional to repeat the experimental observations. An author should recognize that the journal space is a precious source created at considerable cost. An author therefore has an obligation to use it wisely and economically. When requested, the author should make every reasonable effort to provide data, methods, and samples of unusual materials available elsewhere, such as clones, microorganism strains, antibodies, etc., to other researchers with appropriate material transfer agreements to restrict the field of use of the materials so as to protect the legitimate interests of the authors. Authors are encouraged to submit their data to a public database where available. And authors should cite, authors are encouraged to submit their data to a public database where available. Okay, and authors should cite those publications that have been influential in determining the nature of the reported work, and that will guide the reader quickly to the earlier work that is essential for understanding the present investigation. Except in a review, citation of work that will not be referred to in the reported research should be minimized. An author is obligated to perform literature search to find and then cite the original publications that describe closely related work. For critical materials used in the work, proper citation to sources should also be made when these were supplied by a non-author. Any unusual hazards inherent in the chemicals, equipment, or procedures used, an investigation should be clearly identified in a manuscript reporting the work. The author should inform the editor if a manuscript could be considered to report research that, based on current understanding, can be reasonably expected to provide knowledge, products, or technologies that could be directly misapplied by others to pose a threat to public health and safety, agricultural crops and other plants, animals, the environment, or material. Fragmentation of research. Often we are tempted to publish our work in a large number of papers, divide our work into a large number of papers. A scientist who has done extensive work on a system or group of related systems should organize publication so that each report gives a well-rounded account of a particular aspect of the general study. The fragmentation consumes journal space excessively and unduly complicates literature search. And for the convenience of readers, if reports on related studies are published in the same journal or in a small number of journals, it will be very useful for the reader so that they can read the papers. And all readers don't have access to a large number of journals, so it may not be possible for all the readers to read all those papers in different journals. In submitting a manuscript for publication, an author should inform the editor of related manuscripts that the author has under editorial consideration or in press. The copies of those manuscripts should be supplied to the editor, and the relationships of such manuscripts to the one submitted should be indicated. It is improper for an author to submit manuscripts describing essentially the same research to more than one journal or primary publication, unless it is a resubmission of a manuscript rejected for or withdrawn from publication. Now I will tell you a story, first story, 1 minute story, that I was a student once, long time back. Then my supervisor had submitted the same paper to 2 journals, and both of the papers went to the same reviewer, and they complained to the editor. And in those days, 25 years ago, it was not strict, but it was very important nonetheless. So the editors, both the editors, wrote strong letters to my supervisor not to repeat this. And then this became a very useful story to all of us, and it was told at various fora so that all of us understood this, that we will not do this in our own career. It is generally permissible to submit a manuscript for a full paper expanding on a previously published brief preliminary account, such as a communication or letter of the same one. However, at the time of submission, the editor should be made aware of the earlier communication, and the preliminary communication should be cited in the manuscript. An author should identify the source of all information quoted or offered except that which is common knowledge. Now, information obtained privately, as in conversation, correspondence, or discussion with third parties, should not be used or reported in the author's work without explicit permission from the investigator with whom the information originated. Information obtained in the course of confidential services such as referring manuscripts or grant applications should be treated similarly. An experimental or theoretical study may sometimes justify criticism, even severe criticism of the work of another scientist. When appropriate, such criticism may be offered in published papers. However, in no case is personal criticism considered to be appropriate. The co-authors of a paper should be all those persons who have made significant scientific contributions to the work reported and who share responsibility and accountability for the results. Authors should appropriately recognize the contributions of technical staff and data professionals. Other contributions should be indicated in a footnote or an acknowledgement section. An administrative relationship to the investigation does not of itself qualify a person for co-authorship, but occasionally it may be appropriate to acknowledge major administrative assistance. I will tell you my second story. That I used to work in an organization where after the year ended, I found that the director of the institute has 340 publications. So we were all very curious to know how the director of the institute can publish so many papers. His names are there in 340 papers. So I understood and told my colleagues that the director's name should be given in all the papers for various reasons. The deceased persons who meet the criterion for inclusion as co-authors should be so included with a footnote reporting the date of death. No fictitious name should be listed as an author or a co-author. Another story, that I worked with a person who used to give his daughter's name in his students' papers. His daughter was just a 12th class student and the paper was of an M.Tech student. So we were very curious, what contribution did the daughter make? She did not type any, she did not type the paper, she did not draw the figure, she was not familiar with the subject, but her name was there in 2-3 papers. So when asked, her father said that it was done to launch her career. All these things happened. Stop. The corresponding author must advise the editor at the time of submission. I'll come back where I was there. The author who submits a manuscript for publication accepts the responsibility of having included as co-authors of all persons appropriate and none inappropriate. The submitting author should have sent each living co-author a draft copy of the manuscript and have obtained the co-author's assent to co-authorship of it. Here we land into problems sometimes. Suppose the student has left and we have lost track. After a few years, we want to publish the paper. Now we have to communicate the draft of the paper to him and whether he agrees his name in the paper or not. Sometimes we take it for granted that he will not mind if we give his name, but ideally he should approve that. Now I come to a very important subject called conflict of interest. A conflict of interest is a situation in which a person or organization is involved in multiple interests. For example, financial or intellectual, and serving one interest could involve working against another. For example, a conflict between financial gain and meticulous completion and reporting of a research. If there is a conflict, what should the employee do? So that is the conflict. The conflicts of interest and sources of funding of the research reported must be clearly stated at the time of manuscript submission. and will be included in the published article. Now, whether my own thesis supervisor should be the examiner of my student's thesis, all these concerns come into this, whether there is a conflict of interest in this or not. The corresponding author must advise the editor at the time of submission either that there is no conflict of interest to declare or should disclose potential conflicts of interest that will be acknowledged in the published article. The corresponding author must reveal to the editor and to the readers of the journal any potential and or relevant competing financial or other interests of all authors that might be affected by publication of the results content in the author's manuscript. In addition, all authors must declare the existence of any significant financial interest in corporate or commercial entities dealing with the subject of the manuscript, any employment or other relationship within the past 3 years which entitles that have a financial or other interest in the results of the manuscript to include paid consulting, expert testimony, honoraria, and membership of advisory boards or committees of the entity. Another very important aspect is the plagiarism. Plagiarism is the appropriation of another person's ideas, processes, results, or words without giving appropriate credit. Authors should not engage in plagiarism, verbatim or near verbatim copying or very close paraphrasing of text or results from another's work. Now, there are many papers, say 20-30 years back, you will see stark similarity between two papers. I remember one particular paper, same from top to bottom, entirely same, was published in the Journal of Chemical Physics and in the Journal of Colloid and Interface Science in 1978. Entirely same paper. There are many papers published in 1980s and 90s where sections of the paper were entirely same. Introduction was practically same. Experimental details were practically same. But nowadays, this is not accepted anymore. In olden times, 2-3 decades back, that had gone through. The author should not engage in self-plagiarism, which is also known as duplicate publication, unacceptably close replication of the author's own previously published text or results. Sometimes a reasonable person standard is adopted when deciding whether a submission constitutes self-plagiarism or duplicate publication. The software such as Turnitin is often used to check plagiarism. And once this is done, many papers are not even reviewed. They are sent back to the authors for modification. And after it satisfies the requirement of the journal, then only the paper is processed. Another very important aspect is copyright. As an author, you have two concerns with copyright law. As the copyright proprietor of your own work and as the user of copyrighted works by other authors. Your manuscript is protected by copyright from the time of its creation. The copyright protection means that the copyright owner has the exclusive right to reproduce, distribute, or adapt a work for any purpose with certain limitations as specified by the copyright law. Currently, the term of a copyright, with a few exceptions, is the life of the author plus 50 years, which may be changed in future. When you sign an agreement to publish, in addition to publishing the work, the publisher will seek to maximize income for the work by licensing rights to other publishers and granting appropriate permissions to others to use excerpts from your work. Also, in consultation with you, the publisher may pursue infringements that come to their attention. The second concern is the other side of the coin, which relates to use in your manuscript of material copyrighted by others. It is your responsibility to obtain permission to use others' material in your work. The permission requirement is a very important task which takes time, and often permission is not granted also, and it can involve money. So although the copyright statute and court cases call for a fact-based case-by-case analysis to determine whether use of third-party copyrighted material requires permission, it is not realistic or practical to assume that all authors are aware of the legal parameters. For there are lawyers are there, for this aspect who are more expert. So we can consult the lawyers if any doubt is there. Hence, the industry practice has resulted in a consensus on guidelines reflected in this advice. Now, these guidelines apply whether the source material is old or recent, as long as it is in copyright. They apply whether the source material or your work is in print or in electronic form, and whether you change from one format to media to another, format or media to another. However, there are special issues that relate to new media, which are not discovered today. In future, that will come up. The material that requires permission, as a general guide, permission is more likely to be needed if a source material is long or the excerpt which you wish to use represents a significant portion of either of the work in which you found it or in which you intend to use it. Also, any material which constitutes or represents the heart or key elements of the source material, even if you rewrite it, but the main idea is same. Your use will possibly serve as a substitute for the original, will also require permission. More specifically, you should always secure permission for a single quotation or several shorter quotes from a full-length book, more than 300 words in total, a single quotation of more than 50 words from a newspaper, magazine or journal, artwork, photographs or forms, whether or not from a published source. Sometimes more than one permission is required for a photograph, from the photographer and also from the creator of the underlying work shown in the photograph. For example, in the Science magazine, whose publisher is the American Association for the Advancement of Science, those papers which were published before 1970, permissions have to be obtained from the author also. Otherwise, for the recent papers, we can take only from the journal. Now, an author who published his paper in 1970 may not be available today. He may not be alive also today. So taking a permission from such a person is often difficult. Charts, tables, graphs, and other representations where inevitably you are using the entire representation, since the copyrighted features are complete in themselves, are inherent in the whole work. Material which includes all or part of a poem or song lyric, even as it is as one line or the title of the song. Computer representations such as the depiction of results of research on computerized databases, the on-screen output of software, reproduction of web pages, and the capture of internet, or other online screenshots. For small and insignificant portions, something known as fair use policy may apply. But if you have any doubt whether it will go under fair use or a permission has to be obtained, we should consult the editor and the concerned journal. Note, however, that if a website invites or authorizes copying and there is nothing to indicate it contains material which is original to others and therefore would require permission from the original source, then you do not need to get permission. Any third-party software to be distributed as an electronic component with your book. A separate form, letter, and tracking table are available for such permissions. We have to contact the editor. Without the permission, they will not publish the work. And sometimes, due to this, the publication is hampered. It takes for a lot of time, and some of the figures have to be removed also. Figures, tables, or charts, if we don't have the permission. Use of materials from other publications of the same publisher and from your own previously published works. Note that while a publisher will not charge you a fee to use materials published by them, they may collect a fee on behalf of the author and or the artist, and you still need to insert a credit line in the text of your work. Contact the permission department of the publisher if you need permission for use of materials published by them. In addition to these guidelines to obtain copyright permission, you are also responsible for securing all other required clearances, including permissions for the use of trademarks and releasing from privacy claims. Other materials may be in a public domain because they were published without a notice of copyright at a time when such notice was required to preserve copyright. Once again, this is hard to determine. Some materials is intentionally and explicitly made available to copy or use, such as the clip art. Clip art includes the standard line drawings that are available in books and on discs and are classified by subject area, the sports, animals, etc., specifically for free use in other publications. Now, who is responsible for obtaining the permission? It is the duty of the author. And author can use the written permission request form. Some publishers have made it very easy. For example, Elsevier. I am giving an example. Here is the portion marked by the red line, and we can click there, and we will be directly taken to the website of the permission giving organization's rights link, and you have to choose several options. That is, who is your publisher, how much you will use, 1 figure, 2 figure, or entire manuscript, how many copies have to be circulated, and based on that, they will charge a fee. Now, I'll tell you one story when it comes to when should you apply. It is always a good idea to apply when you have almost fixed that I am going to use this figure or this table or this drawing in my paper. Because at that time you have to find out who is going to give me the permission, and the person may not give you permission. So we have to first ask them, and then the person may ask you a fee. If it is very high, and if I am not able to pay that, then I cannot get the permission. So we should request for permission as early as possible. I remember a case when I needed some permission to take from MathWorks. And MathWorks for MATLAB, screenshots of MATLAB, their icons, we have to take permission for that. They have trademarks for that. Okay, so they take some time, at least 2 months. So if we don't apply for permission and the editor of the publisher asks for the permission, then the entire work for the book will be stuck up. And then if we don't get the permission, those figures have to be removed from the book. So response time of 4 to 6 weeks is not uncommon. We have to follow up sometimes. So all publishers don't have this kind of simple mechanism that you pay and get the permission. Sometimes you have to write emails, sometimes you have to follow up, and it may take time. Often we don't get any response from them. That is the most frustrating time, that you need a figure very urgently, but there is no response from the publisher. So all these aspects have to be considered, and it is a good idea to apply for the permission as early as possible. To whom should you apply? Send your written request to the permissions department of the publisher whose material you used to use, regardless of who holds the copyright. Always check credit lines on sources you use to see if the material is actually original or from another book. If the material is credited to another book, then request permission from the original publisher. If the publisher does not control the rights, your request will be referred to the appropriate party, but you may have to call and follow up. You need to obtain the author's approval only if the publisher instructs you to do so. The rights might also belong to illustrators, photographers, agencies, or corporations. In addition, rights can be sold or willed to others. So it can be difficult to track down the actual copyright holder. Publishers usually respond to requests for permission within a reasonable time. The need to consult the author or refer your request to another copyright owner may, however, extend the time required for granting permission. Then there are permission fees, and that is increasing over the years. One figure may cost $50. Most large publishers have standard rates for various classes of books, but there is no generally accepted set of rates for all publishers. There is a group called STM, that Science, Technology and Medicine. If your publisher belongs to that group of publishers from where you are trying to take the permission, you can get a concession also. Many publishers do not charge fees at all for small uses, and other publishers are willing to negotiate fees. If rates seem unusually high or require a pro rata share of your royalties, or if the rights holder makes any other demand such as credit on the cover or a large number of free books, consult your editor before you sign an agreement with the copyright owner. If you decide not to use copyrighted material because of a high fee after permission has been granted, you should inform the copyright holder to avoid being inadvertently billed. What to do with permission granted? We will keep the permission safely in a file, and we have to give it to the publisher who is publishing your work, and then retain duplicates of all these documents for my record. These documents become part of the permanent record, which is used, for example, in determining market rights and in works on future editions. Signed permission form should be sent to your editor along with the final manuscript. Failure to do this may delay the publication of your work. Entire, the editing process and the publication, the typesetting, etc., will be stalled. And many people are involved in your work. There is editor, there is typesetter, there is illustrator. At least 10 persons are involved in that, and all of them will have to stall their work and go to another project. And when you get the permission, they may be engaged in the other project, and it will take time to come back and restart the work. If you are still waiting to get signed forms back at this point, you may have to consider dropping the material in question from the book or paper. Now, how should you give credit? That will be often dictated by the permission giver. They will tell you how to give it, where to give it. Exactly, you have to do it like that. Like this is a screenshot of MATLAB, the PD toolbox of MATLAB. Now you have to write like this, the portion highlighted in yellow, reprinted with permission from the MathWorks Incorporated. They will tell you how to give the credit line. In grant, often as students, we forget these things, that these are something we are not bothered about. But as you write your own paper, you have to concern about this, or book chapter or book, you have to be concerned about this. If one or two identical sentences previously published by an author appear in a subsequent work by the same author, this is unlikely to be regarded as duplicate publication. Now, studies submitted for publication approved must present evidence that the described experimental activities have undergone local institutional review assessing safety and human use of study of subject animals. In the case of human subjects, authors must also provide a statement that study samples were obtained through the informed consent of the donors or in lieu of that evidence by the authority of the institutional board that licensed the use of such material. Authors are requested to declare the identification or case number of institution approval as well as the name of the licensing committee in a statement placed in the section describing the studies, materials, and methods. The material quoted verbatim from the author's previously published work must be placed in quotation marks. In contrast, it is unacceptable for an author to include significant verbatim or near verbatim portions of his or her own work or to depict his or her previously published results. The images should be free from misleading manipulation. In my last story, soon I'll give you a very interesting example how images are manipulated. Sometimes it happens, like often the pressure to publish. You have experimental data, maybe the experimental data are from some other's work, and you have developed a model. It may not be the best model in the world, but it is your model and you are too proud of it. You have to show that the model is very nice and it explains the experimental data, but it's a Tokyo-London scenario. The data are going towards London, your model is predicting towards Tokyo. Then what do you do? In entirely different direction. So sometimes people try to bring it closer and closer, manipulate images and show that your model is doing excellent. And sometimes it's the pressure or to publish, sometimes this happens. And often we see that the experimental the computer programs written by the seniors no longer give the same result once they leave the institute. And then the pressure comes on the junior who is told by the professor that you are no good, you cannot reproduce the work of your senior. So manipulation of figure is a big issue in research, and often we see that we are not able to reproduce the results given in the papers. There are rules and ethical guidelines which provide mandatory standards of practice in experimental studies performed using biological samples obtained from animals or human subjects. Now I come to my last story, a very famous case of a PhD student called Benju Sizen. The student's name was Benju Sizen. Her supervisor was a professor, Dalibor Sims, chemistry department of Columbia University. And the period of entire activity, the right from the inception of the student and up to the findings of the committee is over a decade. And this was such a famous case that it was published as a paper in Chemical and Engineering News. What she had done is to prove that she had developed a promising CH functionalization catalyst. So what she did is she took the NMR spectra of different pure compounds and applied white ink to remove the unwanted peaks and merged the spectra together to get this spectrum. So she cooked up this entire figure to show that she has achieved a very promising carbon-hydrogen functionalization catalyst. Now what happened, she published in many famous journals or well-established journals such as the Journal of the American Chemical Society, and then later the students could not reproduce the work. Then as I said, pressures came on the students from the professor who said that she has found this, you cannot do this, you are no good. So some of them had to leave the lab also. They were thrown out from the lab for their inability to reproduce the work. But then the university authorities, Columbia University, began an investigation on this matter. And I'll tell you the brief details of this. This is the paper, a puzzle named Benju Sizen. It was published in 2011, a bit old, but the thing is very important for all of us. This massive Benju Sizen scientific fraud case, the snapshot of this trail of deceit. In August 2000, Sizen entered as a graduate program in chemistry at Columbia. In 2000, December, he joined the lab, and in October 2002, the Sizen publishes in JACS, the Journal of American Chemical Society, what was later determined to be her first fraudulent NMR spectrum. In 2002, the first concerns about the reproducibility of Sizen's work are raised both at Columbia and by outside investigators. In 2005, Sizen defends her chemistry PhD, and in 2005, Sims lab member designs experimental sting operation that provides the first direct evidence of possible misconduct or fraud by Benju Sizen. In October 2005, Sizen is awarded a PhD degree in chemistry with distinction. In November 7, 2005, Columbia Memorandum cites fabricated data by Sizen in a 2004 JACS paper. A three-person inquiry committee was formed. In 2006, the inquiry committee reports clear evidence of Sizen's misconduct and fraud to the Dean of Columbia's Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. In March 2006, Sims retracts two papers and parts of a third co-authored with Sizen in the same journal. In June 2006, Sims retracts 4 more papers co-authored with Sizen that appeared in JACS and Organic Letters. In August 2006 to February 2007, a full investigation of Sizen is undertaken by a committee of investigators appointed by Columbia. In November 2010, the Federal Office of Research Integrity levels 21 findings of scientific misconduct against Sizen based on its oversight and analysis of the Columbia investigation. In March 2011, Columbia retracts Sizen's PhD degree in chemistry. In July 2011, this investigation team releases redacted copies of Columbia's Sizen investigation and its oversight analysis. Okay, so that's all for my today's talk. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, participants, if you have any questions, you may come across. Is there any questions? Professor Ghosh is here. Any question, or you want something to add upon whatever has been said? Okay. Yes, Mayuri, you can go ahead with your question. Please introduce yourself first and then ask the question. You can unmute your speaker. Yes, Mayuri, are you there?
Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Sir, actually, I would like to ask something. So, generally, when we go for publishing a paper, so
Yes.
there are so many journals that we find the advertisement. So, some of them are maybe fake, I don't know. But the thing is that how can we recognize for which we can go for publishing and which journals we can reject?
So that is about selection of the journal where you want to submit your paper. So you can see where the previous papers were submitted, like say similar works similar to your work were published. So you can see the subject area, which journals publish in that area. Suppose your area is thermodynamics, then you can see which journals publish similar works. So and then you can see the impact factor also and the level of your work. If your work you feel is very high quality, then you can go for a high impact journal. So you select the subject area, you select the journals, you have to make a list of the journals, say the subject area wise, and those journals where similar works in the past were published, and then the quality of the journal. If the impact factor of the journal is very high, say it is 10, and if you feel that my work is not that good, then there is very little chance of publication in that journal. Still, you can submit that, and you can ask for you can wait for the editor's comments. If the journal sends it for review, it is good. You have got a chance that it may be published. You can try with a high impact factor journal. Like that, you can proceed.
Okay. The next question.
Thank you, sir. So actually,
Yes.
so actually, some people have got some mails regarding some journals. So can we trust them fully?
No, I don't think you should trust them without applying your own brain. You can always, there is something called lend everybody thy ear, few thy voice. So you can lend your ear to them and listen to their advice. Then you finally judge by yourself. Don't go by your friends or anybody's ideas. Final judgment is with you only. What you are doing, it is your responsibility. So you have to apply your own judgment, but you can listen to their advice, what they are saying, what they are suggesting. There may be good advices. They may be genuinely giving you good advice. So you can take their advice definitely, but final decision is yours.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we move to the next question. AC Mohan, you can go ahead. First, introduce yourself.
Sir, I am
Yes.
Dr. Anandraj. Instead of Sandramagan, I am having some doubt.
Yes.
Before going to raise my question,
Yes.
sir, really this is a very wonderful talk on this particular case, which is most important for the young scientist people, whoever is working actively working in the different research area. Sir, my question is, nowadays most of the journal given the similarity index.
Yes.
And what is the major difference between this similarity index and plagiarism? Because most of the students are coming from rural area, they don't know that how to write well in good manner. So what they are expected from the reputed journals.
Yes,
Can-
if there is similarity, if there is similarity with other papers, maybe your own papers or somebody else's papers, and if the similarity is very high, then journal will not accept it. You will have to rewrite it. So one problem is that if you are working in an area which is very old and hundreds and thousands of papers are there, always there will be some similarity there, and the similarity amount of similarity will be very high. And those papers which were published earlier, they have used the best language, the best terms. If you want to replace them with your own terms, they will be sometimes inferior. That is the problem. So you have to rewrite that portion. And even if you acknowledge that you have used from these sources, too much similarity may not be accepted. So plagiarism you may avoid by citing them, that you have cited them and taking permission from those papers and use that. But then again, the journal's own requirement is similarity. It is too similar with another paper. One way is to, only way maybe, is to use to rewrite it. You have to rewrite it and reduce the similarity. Even then, similarity may not be reduced that much. So, only option is to submit a paper then to a journal which accepts a higher amount of similarity. There are journals which accept 5% similarity, 10% similarity, 20% similarity. If you cannot reduce it below 25% similarity, then you have to choose that journal which will accept 20% similarity.
Yes, sir, I agree. But the similarity, what they highlighted, they are just highlighting that a chemical name and IUPAC name of the chemical
Yes.
species. So that we cannot able to change now. For
That we
example,
that we cannot change. Yes. So
they take it in their account. That is also similarity.
Similarity is there. You can write to the editor that this is the case if the editor considers that. This situation we have also faced, that say, for example, Langmuir adsorption isotype. It is so old and in your paper it is there, and in tens of thousands of paper, Langmuir, Freundlich, those names are there. So that is also considered in your plagiarism. So we can list down those terms and write to the editor or exclude it from your search. But then it is not your search or your declaration of plagiarism that matter. The journal will perform its own calculation. It will, you can write to the editor and explain the matter. If the journal's plagiarism software says that this is 35% similarity and you have excluded those terms and perform the similarity check, you get 20%. Then journal will follow its own style. Journal's own standards and requirements, they will follow. Recently, we faced this issue that the student has removed some of these common terms and put this in the similarity check software and then perform the similarity check, then it becomes 20%. But the journal does not accept that. It will consider everything. So, as per the standard of the journal, it is not accepted.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, Yogesh Patil, next participant, you may go with your.
Yes, Yogesh, still.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Yogesh Patil from ICT Mumbai.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for the wonderful lecture and thank you for the organizing conference. Yeah, I would like to ask question. Currently I'm writing my review paper, so I want to put some illustrations from published paper. So
Yes.
for permission, is there any charge or how much time it will take?
See, if you use the figure as it is, then also you have to take permission. If you modify it and adopt it, then also you will have to take permission. And you contact the publisher immediately and ask whether there is any permission, any charge. So they will specify. Now, what happened about 1 year back? The student wrote the review paper and the paper got accepted also. But finally, when the publisher is going to put it in the press, they want these letters of permission. Then we started to take permission. Then it turned out that they need a lot of money. So we had to pay nearly $200 as permission. They can. In recent times, most of the publishers ask for money. And for one figure, it can be $50, as high as $50. Some of them give it for free, but some of them ask for money. So better at the very beginning, when you have finalized the paper, your review, you should contact the publisher. And also the question is whether they will at all give you the permission. Because if you take some companies photograph, some important photograph given by the company, and it may be proprietary material. Company may not give you permission also. We had permission from Bosch company. They did not want to give the permission because it was one of their processing photograph.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, we have the last. I'll ask Bhavna Singh.
Hello.
Yogesh,
Yes,
you can unmute. You can mute your Bhavna.
Hello. Hello, sir. Bhavna here from IIT Delhi.
Yes.
Sir, I just want to ask: the selection of journal entirely depends on impact factor, or there are other many factors which influence the quality of a journal?
There are many that, but one of the most widely used journal is impact factor. But then there are which say there are some journals such as say AICHE journal, which has a very high rank among the old chemical engineers, because in that journal many of the fundamental things of chemical engineering were published, or say chemical engineering science, which are there from 1960 onwards. All fundamentals of chemical engineering were published in AICHE journal, Chemical Engineering Science, Industrial and Engineering Chemistry Research. But these journals don't have very high impact factor. Impact factor may be less than 5 also. But there are new journals which have very high impact factor. But if your supervisor says that this journal is a prestigious one, and you also know that your paper will be read by those famous chemical engineers, you can give it a try also. But the mathematical parameter that determines the high standard of a journal is the impact factor. That is the one. But it does not mean that the other journals which have low impact factor are bad. It does not mean like that. It actually depends on the audience. Some journals are read by a wide variety of authors. They cite the papers in large quantities, so impact factor goes up.
Okay, thank you all participants for attending the first session. So we also thank Professor Pallav Ghosh for giving us a wonderful insight into the ethical guidelines for publishing, and I hope you have taken up the important points which can help you in writing your thesis, report, or any other dissertation, for example. So we end up here, and we take a break of 2 hours. We meet again at 2:30 with Professor Isabel Parucho's lecture on tuning eutectics for water cleaning technologies and its development. So I will ask everybody to please come back, let's say 5 minutes before 2:30 or 2:25 near about, so that we can start the lecture immediately at 2:30. Because the second session we have all the lectures concerning the foreign faculty members, so we should adhere to the time limit. So that's it. Then see you again. The second part. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for this.
Thank you.
Actually, our material gulo mainly ethical guideline gulo website.
Well,